My name is Brandon Bryant. I'm a 27-year-old veteran. I was born here, born in Missoula. I was very much an introvert growing up. Single mother, 2 sisters, crap load of female cousins. So I was pretty much alone all the time. And I grew up with books and comic books and heroes and villains. I kind of grew up optimistic, idealistic. I grew up in a Christian home. I wasn't necessarily too patriotic. I was more of the fact of good guys versus bad guys, making decisions and doing the right thing. I decided to get into the Air Force because I was racking up college debt and I didn't know what else to do. So when I was talking to the Air Force recruiter, he's like, you know those guys that sit in the operations center for James Bond and gather the intelligence he needs to do his mission? And I was like, yeah, I know those guys, like Q and all them. And he's like, yeah, you'll be one of those guys. And I was like, it's pretty badass. Getting into the drone program was weird. The introduction is like, this is what we do. We kill people and break things. That is what our job is. I worried about it, you know, like, can I do this? Can I actually kill someone? Could I actually pull the trigger? I mean, I'm not actually pulling the trigger, I'm guiding the missile in, but it's essentially the same thing. I don't see a difference. We typically flew in Iraq between 8,000 and 12,000 feet. And then in Afghanistan, we flew between 18 and 25,000 feet. And depending on atmospherics, if it was a completely clear day, you would definitely get a good picture. And depending on how close you were, you could probably read the license plate on someone's car. We can see something as simple as people playing a soccer game. We can see individual players and we can even see the ball.
It would have been a 7 or 8 hour trip for the 16-year-old Tariq through treacherous terrain, through potential Taliban hotspots, and of course under drone surveillance.
It was the first time that the international media, the drone victims, the tribal elders, and the general public came together. It was held in a 5-star hotel. The tribal elders spoke in terms of political implications, how they felt, and the drone victims spoke about personal stories.
ये ड्रोन हमले जो हो रहे हैं पूरी दुनिया खामोश है मैं आवाज उठा रहा हूं सारे ये जवान हैं बटन दबा देते तो हमारे पूरे खानदान पूरे एक कबीला वो बिल्कुल एक ही बटन के साथ ड्रोन हमले के साथ तबाह हो जाता है This is a part of the drone missile that was used to kill that child.
It was a gathering to get the voice of the victims of drone attacks out to the general public as well as the rest of the world.
And that was the main goal. We were going to use the media to try and establish who had been killed and also why, where and how.
Well, because of the inaccessibility of Waziristan, it's very, very hard to compile any kind of credible evidence or evidence that other people will see as credible. That was part of the reason we organised this conference in Islamabad.
We called it a jirga.
A jirga is a traditional tribal gathering.
That's what people in that area use to settle their disputes.
At one stage I came across a young boy, Tariq Aziz. When I was talking to Tariq, one of the first things that he did was he handed me his cousin's student ID card. And as I looked at it, I looked back at Tariq and I noticed that he was crying. He started to tell me the story of his cousin who had been killed from a drone strike. He'd come to the Jirga primarily to inform us a little bit more about what had happened to his cousin, to people in his local village, and find out how to stop the killing. We sat together all day, we ate together at lunchtime, we laughed together, we became friends. Tariq was extremely intelligent and funny to be around. He had a nice sense of humour. He was fascinated by photography and intrigued by Western music, mentioning artists, and one that sprang to mind was Lady Gaga. He started to talk about drone strikes in his village, how he was unable to sleep at night. He was scared, he was worried about his family, his friends. Tariq was traumatized.
He wanted to talk about how he was affected by drone attacks and basically to give the message that the people of Waziristan want justice against the killings of innocent civilians under drone attacks that are operated by the US.
और इस तरह सबूत इकट्ठा किया है कि इंशाल्लाह वो कोई भी किसी तरह भी नसिया वाले झूठ साबित कर सकते हैं और पूरी अमेरिका कुव्वत भी लग जाए उसको गलत साबित नहीं कर सकते इंशाल्लाह। और जिसने तकरीबन उस दिन मैंने सब चीज़ें कैमरा को साथ रखा। दर्दनाक कहानी इन बच्चों की थी। दूसरा इनका भाई था, ये भी वो समझ रहे थे ये हमारा दूसरा भाई है, ये भी ड्रोन में जान बहुत हो चुका है। ये इनको उस वक्त कुछ मालूम नहीं हो रहा था कि मेरी माँ और मेरा बाप जो है इनके टुकड़े यहाँ पर पड़े हैं।
And the people who had gathered there adopted a resolution condemning the strikes. The outcome of the Jirga was a big success because it allowed people to come together, listen to stories, and come to a common resolution. Then we went together to a rally, and Tariq Aziz traveled there with us.
We travelled towards the rally, and Tariq sat next to me. He seemed relaxed. He was laughing with his friends. Tariq and everybody else got out, and they went to the rally.
Thousands of Pakistanis came to support a giant rally on Sunday.
The protest against the United States drone attacks in Pakistan.
जो drones हैं, ये पाकिस्तान के अवाम की human rights की खिलाफवर्जी है.
People from all over the country, irrespective of their ages and backgrounds, came together to the rally.
हम अमेरिका को पैगाम देना चाहते हैं कि आप जितने ड्रोन अटैक्स करेंगे, उतने ही लोग आपसे नफरत करेंगे.
After that, Tariq Aziz and the other attendees returned to their homes.
دبل میشه من در جوته میشه که پارلمان شه پاور واقع جوته جلوس غاوه ان شاء الله دې میشه خبره ورسي.
شدای میشه غسر وکړه سیټینګ مو وکړه ټول سیټینګ چې فوټبال میچ مو دای سبوتا
ډېر کرکله او میش به دا چې د تدوا کې راځي د فوټبال ولا او د سرار چکه
هم برکشته چلوړه میش تپی کلی تا ګاټ شي پلولیتا چې میشټپ لګول لکه مو هغه ته وویل د وریر غور سره عبدالعزیز طارق عزیز وریر وای میش سره
یو ګیوه سره هغه شوله ختم شو او یو سویه وي درڅه دوه سره
چې ګاډي نه مو سره راوبسله مو سره خپل چې کوم ګاډی و دغه ګاډي ته مو سره چکړل دی
د طریق بدن خو چې ما ولیده لکه ډېر تشته بېرته هغه شول پریشان شول غمجن شول بېرته لکه د ده بل بیا د دې لکه مونږ خو په علاقې کې لکه پښتو ډېر غا دی لکه مونږ ته و چې بس ته سیرته شه
لکه ولته چې ورور د اول سر چې لکه ډېر سره ګابراو شي بجنه شو درنه جګه
2 days later, I got a call.
You know, I heard about Tariq a few days later after I'd gone back to England.
I got an email.
I was at work when we found out.
We got an email and a telephone call.
4 days after the Jirga, I received an email from Shahzad. The email simply said Tariq as the heading, and I opened it instantly. To my shock, I found out that Tariq had been murdered by a drone strike.
And that was a shock. I was like, how is it possible? Where was he? What was he doing? And it's like completely unbelievable.
My initial thoughts were, this wasn't happening, this was just a dream.
We didn't think that Tariq, the 16-year-old kid who wanted to talk about football, would be killed in a drone attack the same week that we'd met him.
تاسو چې مې وکړه چې نه یا خدای پاکه دا څه وشول و دا سره بندې کېږي و دا اوس ولکه دی چې نشته که نه هغه خوښي نشته بلکل نه مجلسونه نه صحبتونه هغه مخکې چې دا خو هغه لکه فټبالونه موږ خپل پکې پرېښودل
بیا چې که یوه کېرته مړه کړل هغه نه بعد زه تلوړل مې رلته بکسه مې وروړه خو ډېر څه حالات و
نو احساس خو بس افسوس کړل دي لکه ډېر زیات افسوس مې وکړ چې یو معصوم بېګناه کس په ډرون باندې
لکه طارق به براشه خو چې به بیا یغه چې لکه ایو غادو ورته په پښتو کې غنا چې په کپن کې د تصویر سره کېږدم داسې نه چې په جنت کې رانه یشي
Why did it happen? Why was Tariq killed?
If the U.S. had any information that Tariq Aziz was part of a criminal organization, was planning to carry out attacks on the United States, then our federal law enforcement agents should have been working with the authorities of Pakistan to arrest him.
And one really has to ask the question why the government was not able to arrest or even question him. This is Islamabad we're talking about. It's the capital of the country.
The population is over 1 million people. Jirga was a real public event.
It was at a big hotel. It was advertised widely. It was an open event.
Tariq Aziz was plainly visible to hundreds and hundreds of people. He talked with reporters. Everything about him that the authorities could have wanted to know about his location and about his recent activities were known to the United States.
So it would have been extremely easy for them to approach him, sit down and talk to him, or for that matter, put him in jail. But instead the CIA chose to go and kill him without giving him the opportunity to give his side of whatever it is that they thought that he had done. There is no evidence there whatsoever. And they've given him no lawyers, there is no judge, and there's no jury.
Our preference is always to capture if we can, because we can gather intelligence. But a lot of the terrorist networks that target the United States, the most dangerous ones, operate in very remote regions, and it's very difficult to capture them.
But what we can discern from the pattern of strikes is that essentially Pakistan's been declared a no-capture zone, that automatically capture is not considered feasible.
If you just look at the numbers, there have been dramatically more people killed in recent years than have been captured.
They've killed maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people in targeted killings, and they've captured a handful.
There are no CIA agents in Waziristan, so they rely on local people.
And this is where the fundamental wrong is, because these people are working for you for money.
And that reliance is utterly misplaced. And what you see in Tariq's case, and it just pains me to say this, that you know without any real room for dispute that there was someone in that room when we were having our jirga who was an informant for the US intelligence services, and that person picked out Tariq. I can tell you as a matter of fact that Tariq was not an extremist. And the way you know what intelligence they relied on to kill someone is what they release immediately after the killing. And in that case, they said 4 militants were killed. And of course, we know that 2 kids were killed. That's how it happened.
I asked the CIA about the strike, and their response was, on that day, no child was killed. In fact, the adult males were supporting al-Qaeda's facilitation network. So despite all of these technological assets and human assets, we're not there, we don't know. And I think there is a lot of room for error.
Killing Tariq was clearly breaking the law. In fact, it was further than that. It was just murder.
Tariq Aziz was one of almost 300 children killed. Why are these children being killed?
This is a targeted, focused effort at people who are on a list of active terrorists.
The killing of Tariq Aziz has to call into question the credibility of the government's kill list methodology.
The vast majority of the strikes here are against people whose identities the government doesn't know.
We do not know where targeted killings are authorized to be used. We do not know the specific identities of people who have been killed.
The Constitution empowers the president to protect the nation from any imminent threat of attack.
So how can Tariq Aziz, a 16-year-old boy, possibly meet that definition of imminent threat?
The Justice Department has defined an imminent threat based not on whether the threat is specific and immediate, which is what imminent means.
So that people pose imminent threats regardless of whether they are actually engaged in any ongoing immediate attack against the United States.
We have a responsibility to defend this country, and that's what we're doing.
Killing Tariq hasn't made us any safer. It's taken away a young boy's life. It's destroyed a family and a community.
Under the interpretations we've heard from the administration and members of Congress, drone strikes could go on indefinitely against enemies that keep morphing into new enemies. But killing should be the exception, not the rule.
Tariq Aziz should never have died. The U.S. should not have been using military force to attack innocent civilians, let alone children.
I would question a policy that says it is legitimate and even sensible to assassinate a 16-year-old boy.
He was trying to be part of the constructive way forward.
Tariq wanted to do something to help. I think he felt that he had more to give, more to talk about, and more to understand. And the impact of Tariq's murder on my life has been huge. It made me reflect deeply and made me question a lot of things. He has now become a symbolic figure in innocent children that have been killed by drone strikes.
He was just a kid.
There's 2 guys in front, 1 guy in the rear. And they're walking up this path, and 2 guys in front are discussing. They're like, you can see them having an avid conversation. They've got something slung over their shoulders, which look to be weapons. The mountainous portions of Afghanistan are not so unsimilar from the mountainous regions of Montana. And seeing people with guns walking around the mountains of Afghanistan was like, well, people are walking with guns in the mountains of Montana. But as soon as we get eyes on them, it's like immediately confirm door weapons, confirm your cleared target. So place the target at their feet and we get missiles away. Ends up getting all 3 of them. But the guy in the back, it ends up cutting his leg off above the knee and severing his femoral artery. And he's rolling around, he's holding it, and he's just like rolling around, but you can see like where his leg is missing, and the blood is spurting out and landing on the ground, and it's cooling. It's hot. It's a hot pool of blood, and it's cooling. And we keep eyes on and watch the guy become the same color as the ground that he bled out on. I could almost see his facial expression. It was, I can almost see his mouth open and crying out. Maybe he cursed us, or maybe he asked Allah for forgiveness for us. Who knows what his last thoughts were, but it wasn't pretty, whatever it was. It was shock and trauma, and his ears were probably ringing, and he was bleeding out, and he was in agony. I didn't know how to react. No one teaches you how to react. They teach you how to do it. There's no, they ignore the reaction part. I wished I never contributed further to that.
Before any strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, the highest standard we can set.
The vast majority of those killed in drone strikes, over 98%, have not been high-value targets.
The adoption of signature strikes make indiscriminate killing, a policy.
What they end up with is what I described earlier, the signature strike.
And they moved back to a greater reliance on these signature strikes.
A signature strike is a drone strike that isn't based on the identity of the target.
I obtained classified U.S. intelligence reports on drone strikes. What the documents reveal are the way that signature strikes are put together. And these are strikes against people who fit the signature of what the U.S. government says is a terrorist.
Maybe they are walking in and out of the compound with guns, maybe they're getting in trucks and they're moving to the Afghan border.
And drone operators seated thousands of miles away from the area affected are looking at video feeds, assessing those video feeds, and based on that, making decisions about whether or not someone who's walking through the community is a suspected terrorist.
You conclude on the basis of the behavior that they are a terrorist, and you kill them.
In a number of cases that I looked at, the CIA wasn't sure who they were hitting.
The agency became convinced that it had gotten so good at watching from above that it could distinguish different groups. It could distinguish whether a terrorist leader was at a certain location.
But there is room for a lot of misunderstanding when you're doing something like conducting signature strikes.
A drone strike is only as good as the intelligence that is behind the actual strike.
Anyone who's worked in intelligence knows that intelligence doesn't, quote unquote, prove anything. It's not evidence.
So drones hit what they aim to hit, but if they're aimed at the wrong people, then civilians are killed.
Former U.S. Ambassador Cameron Munter had said that one man's combatant was another man's chump who went to a meeting.
When Leon Panetta was director of the CIA, somebody memorably said, if Leon sees a few guys doing jumping jacks on the ground, he thinks that's a terrorist training camp.
Classified documents suggest U.S. officials don't always know exactly how many or who they're killing.
They don't always have precise ID.
The apparent targeting of people whose identity is not known.
They may not be as precise as many U.S. officials claim.
As soon as those signature strikes begin, we start to see another steep escalation in civilian casualties. So that's what happens when signature strikes go wrong. Large numbers of people die because they don't know who's been killed in most of the drone strikes.
On March 17, 2011, a jirga was held in Darakel to resolve a dispute over a chromite mine.
If there is a feud getting out of hand, jirga will convene and everyone has a chance to speak. It really is a democracy, and that is a mechanism to make sure that there is stability in society.
دغه کې په 40 نه پوسه کسان سره ناست وي په 2 ځله ناست وي یو ځای کوي بل ځای کوي او په میژ باندې دا خبرې کړلې چې د کورمیټ او د لرګۍ په مځکه نوستوي میژ دا سګرد.
They held the jirga in an open space in a bus depot in broad daylight. Tribal elders informed the Pakistani military.
Brigadier Dogan was in command of the brigade on the border, so he is a key commander. The brigadier knew about the jirga 10 days in advance. His own army camp was 10 kilometers from the site of the jirga.
So this was an open public event that pretty much everyone in the community and surrounding area knew about. So the jirga begins in the morning at about 10 o'clock, and after about 20 minutes or so,
دا په ماس کې په پکام یو لاس باجې باندې په 17/3/2011 کې په میژ باندې څلور مزایل وشتل شو. 2 مزایل په میژ باندې وشتل شو، 2 په بل ځای باندې وشتل شو.
There's smoke and debris and chaos.
It was huge explosions. So people in the shop in the nearby areas, they rushed to the place.
پزې کې میرشي کې مړونه حمله په میش باندې وشو پزې کې موږ باندې داسې منظر و چې بالکل په میش باندې جهنم جوړ شو. هیڅ معلومات مشته داسې نشه میش د څه میش کا واس راوړي خو میش باندې تکه تر شپه
15 منټ په سیټ باندې مت اطلاع ورسېده چې هغه جرګه باندې ډرون حمله وشوه. بیا دا هغه وخت کې هغه ځای ته ورغله چې په هغه کې زخمیان او د بنی ادم ټوکړې ټوکړې دغه الته موجوده وی چې زه ورسېدم.
دوه په یواد دوه په بله باندې چې کله دا مزایل ولاګېدل تیره لړه چې ګاشه دغه ځینه هیڅ معلومات نه ورته وشي میش دا څه وشول چې کله ورسېدلې لیکن دغه حال چې کوم نست وه
بس خو ژړو وه بس هر چا ژړل هر څه خفه وي ژړو وه څېره نورې وې چې دا بیا ولې دا ډرون حملې په میژ باندې شي اوس د اسمونه په میژ باندې مزایل درشي څه پاته د ډرون نه لګي خالي مزایل درشي میژ باندې ولګي
چې کله میډ ورسېدلې د تخیله وه سیمه ته پوښتنه وکړه چې څېره کسون وي چې ویسوب یې نشي شمېرې نشي ټوکړې ټوکړې دي خلک غشه غشه دي ښه نه وه صرف چې داسې مو وکتل او صرف ټوکړې وې کپړې کمیسینه پکې سوي وي
پلور کیم دی موټر ځای کیم دی چې کله ورولل د خپل پلور مې ولدل چېرته وایي چې دغه دی بیا هم په ځم لږ بیا زه پکې کتل مې د څرمنې چې کومه وه چې ګوته مې پرې لګوله څرمنې بلکل روښته ډارېږه.
ولی ټول مشران پکې شهیدان شوي دي نو زه ډېر خفه شوم ځکه چې زموږ پلار چې و نو هغه زموږ د قبیلې مشر و زموږ د آمدن ذریعه وه ټول زموږ ډیپنډ چې و نو زموږ په پلار باندې و.
دای مو لکه ګوښه مو وکتل صرف او دا چې مو وکتل دی بالکل خاتم هېڅ څه پېژندګلي نه شوله مخ یې خر و په ټول وجود لوس پرې هر څه شی خاتم وي دا سوي وي بالکل.
پښه مې خوږېږي یا صحیح نه ده خو دا ډیکي سره لګي زخم کو دا 2 ورځې بیا پرېشن کو او هغه ژنه ډېر تکلیف دی ته په زه دماغ کې مې پارخونه راځي.
The loss of 40 leaders on a single day is devastating for that community. It's devastating in terms of leadership. It's devastating in terms of the moral compass, and it's devastating in economic terms as well.
نه چونکې دا زموږ دپاره یو ډېر نقصان و هغه به په جرګې کې کېناستو د خلکو مسلې به یې حل کولې د خلکو د ترقۍ او د خوشحالۍ دپاره یې به کارونه کول ځکه چې هغه د خپلې علاقې یو الکټ کونسلر و.
This drone strike is coming at the end of a series of drone strikes. It's feeding into the sense of no one is safe, nowhere is safe, nothing is safe. even a jirga, the most cherished, the most treasured institution of the tribal areas. So we cannot even sit down and resolve an issue. That is not safe anymore.
اسمیش په وجه باندې جلګا نشي کړلای سره په وجه دا ډېر نستای ویل وړای میش نشي سره کړلای ځکه چې میش 24 غنټه ډرون همیشه ګرځي میش تاسو.
That impact has really affected the population and their basic sense of security and basic sense of living in that area.
او باقي د میش ژوندین خو از د تبعی سره مخ ته لکه د میش چې سمره ادارې دي او ختم شولې.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today.
3 months after 42 civilians died, John Brennan stood up and said,
Nearly for the past year, there hasn't been a single collateral death because of the exceptional proficiency, precision of the capabilities that we've been able to develop.
High-level authorities tell the American public that there have been no civilian casualties.
They were presumably using this notion that any male of a certain age, roughly between 14 and 60, who is killed is automatically counted as a combatant.
The Vietnam body count as a metric was flawed. It did not really give you a measure of how successful you were being. In fact, it led you astray in assessing that. And the drone strikes are the same way. They're the wrong metric. Tell me how we're winning if every time we kill one, we create 10.
The strikes at Datakel caused a significant negative reaction by Pakistani authorities and by the Pakistani people.
Anti-American sentiment in Pakistan reached greater heights.
That very large drone strike really upended U.S.-Pakistani relations.
I was a military guy for 25 years. I've done 7 wars. I'm not about being nice to the enemy. But the blowback and the aspect of political destabilization, those things ultimately do make us less safe.
The growing public outcry appears to have at least compelled the country's top political and military leadership to publicly denounce US drone attacks.
Violence is not the only solution. You have a recourse available. You can go to Pakistani courts to take up this matter legally.
د دنیا په کوم ملک چې ته ګرځې نو هلته د عدالت دپاره یوه اداره یو جوډیشري سیسټم موجود وي نو د جوډیشري سیسټم کار هم دا وي چې هغې ته انصاف میلاو شي.
د میش سره د عوض وچات کو میش بتعلیمه خلک بزبانه یې و میش سره هیڅ
شهزاده اکبر سره زما رابطه وشوه هلته د ده کسان و هغه ماته راغلي وو هغې موږ ته ویلي وو چې تاسو به دا کیس په عدالت کې اوچتوئ چې تاسو ته انصاف میلاو شي.
Relatives of the victims have decided to fight a legal battle against the CIA for killing innocent civilians.
When we started with serving legal notices and starting the drone litigation, my critics, they were saying, how can you do drone litigation? Oh, there's no jurisdiction in tribal areas. There were so many issues and there were so many objections. It's a common joke in Pakistan that a grandfather starts a litigation and then the grandson actually gets to hear the verdict in that case. But I decided to file the Peshawar High Court litigation because the 17th March 2011 strike was a typical example of signature strikes and what's wrong with them. But during the process, the most interesting thing was that in the last 5 years, more than 1,400 civilian Pakistanis have been killed in drone strikes.
A Pakistani court has declared U.S. drone attacks in the country a war crime.
In a landmark judgment, the High Court described the attacks as a blatant violation of Pakistan's sovereignty.
The court ruled that the practice was illegal.
A court in Pakistan has ruled U.S. drone strikes on Pakistani territory are illegal and should be stopped.
They declared that in drone strikes, CIA officials are committing the offense of murder. It's not a demand of Pakistan anymore that drone strikes should stop. It's their legal obligation that drones need to stop. we have proved that if you really want to do something and if you really want to get justice for people who have been denied justice, you can achieve that.
The human rights organization Reprieve has filed a lawsuit against the UK for its role in drone strikes.
Barack Obama is facing demands in court to reveal more about the U.S. drone program.
The ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of families of 3 Americans killed in drone strikes.
Victims accused John A. Rizzo of conspiracy to wage a war of aggression, to commit murder and crimes against humanity.
Can you take the drones out of the hands of the CIA?
Ma'am, let me finish.
People on the ground are saying, where is the accountability for this? It's unleashed a global citizen movement.
We don't feel that our government should be killing people without trial, without conviction.
It's a very, very wicked thing to do.
This demonstration, it's for Obama, for him to transform the current policies of the United States.
Thousands gathered on Monday to condemn the recent U.S. drone attack.
Protesters in Atlanta say drones are dangerous and they want them banned.
Drone strikes are acts of terrorism.
In San Diego, there are regular protests outside General Atomics.
Killer drones have no shame. War is not a video game.
We need to stop these killer drones from leading us into a world of chaos and lawlessness.
You lawmakers, you senators, enough is enough. I don't think the United States has the authority to be going around the world deciding who to assassinate.
Coming to work, told that they found a high-profile dude hanging out. We're told that they have intel that this guy is there and they're gonna strike him. And so, like, if this guy's a high-ranking bad guy, like, why not? There was a lot of activity there earlier that day. Pretty much everyone's left. But the intel that the guy is still there. And so we fired. And then 6 seconds before missile impact, something runs around the building. When I brought that up, the screener who disseminated video feed said that it was a dog. But I don't think that he ever mentioned a dog the entire evening of them monitoring. I mean, I was pretty much brand spanking new at this. I'd only been doing it a couple months. So who was I to question? I doubt myself at times, like maybe I was seeing things, but ultimately I believe there was a child killed, and that burden is placed on me. Doing this, I had to really think about why was I here? Why am I doing this? I was pretty religious at the time, and I went and talked to the chaplain, and under the orders of my commander, actually, and I got nothing out of it. He was just basically like, it's God's plan. It's God's fucking plan for people to die. Like, that, I don't want to hear that shit. I didn't feel like I was a part of anything good or wholesome or healthy or contributing to the greater good. I felt like I was destroying myself. I was taking who I pictured myself to be in my head and chopping it down and breaking it down, taking a sledgehammer to it. And it crumbled.
زما نوم ده رفیق الرحمن خپل محکمه تعلیم شه د پرایم سکول ټیچر یم ماشومانو ته سبق یې ما اوس لاس کوله کېږي که نه ما 10 سال سرویس پوره شو دونه د کوم بچونه د مستقبل کوشش کیږي مستقبل یې روښانه شي د باوجود همیشه کې مدد د امریکای د ډرون نه کنه لوس نشي دا مو بچی دو نبیلا نوم ده دا یوه مو بله بچی دو آسمان نوم ده دا زبیر رحمان مو بچای ده زه په خپله چې سکول نه لوړ شو کلي شی دا د مځکې دي پاشه میږ د هغوی مشی دي ځناور دی د پوره خوار
دوسری سے مقصد چې وخت تیری ډېره سبقه وه لکه خلک یې ډېره ښه وخت تېر کړه
دو 2012 او 2:45 بجې د ورځې وې زه په خپله چې سکول چوټي شوه میرنشاه ته لاړم ما د سکول هغه نه دی که نه زه د سامان انچارج د سکول کې که نه
ګېډۍ مې تړلی نیره وینا بیا سره
بیا چې زه په ګاډي شنوس یم ښه خواشي جامې کې د ماشومانو دپاره مې میټایي وخوستې وې که نه
چای څښلو چای مې در وخوستو یو خوړه پې نه وکړلو چې یې پرې ډرونه ته وغوښتله کور شه په کټا شي کمره شنه نه موچا چې کله ډرونه ته وغوښتله میډ وسنه
یو خړ ګړ دی نه چکړل
داسې غاک سره وغنجېږي که نه
ما منډه کړل بیا په دویم چې دننه ولاړې خالي په حواله
منډه کړل خړ لګي مې ولیدله
دا بصری تال شول مو په شای به ولاګېدو
انا پیچه بیا پرنجه
نه مو ته پته وه چې دویم یا کېږي
دویم میشت ته پته لکه څه وره ډرون ویشتلي دا دیګه په خال کې باندې اول دوه ولي په 15 منټه بعد چې خال پر بند شي بیا پر وولي لکه نره خلک د غاس سره
دا وی چې دویم و چې نره خلک به ورشي په پابند ورولي
دویم پنځه منټه بعد بیا راغلل
چې زه پرېوتل پسې پرېوتل مو سیری وکړه چې وایي مړ شول سیری مې وکړې مړ شولم
چا ډېر زخمي و و دا نره وړو بچو نیوښل چې څه کې میرمشاه ته وړي دي څه کې میرلي ته څه کې پېښور ته وړي دي
The attack was on October the 24th. I came from Islamabad and interviewed the family in Peshawar clinic. But in general, you know, the sense was of a family that had had a very traumatic experience, that were very upset.
و دا مې چې کومه د بچو نه ډاکټرونه تر وستلي وي دغه اکسرې دي دا کلیم رحمان دی مور یاره ده دا ورونه غټه هډیکه موت شوه ده دا اپریشن کړی ده دا یې دته د اسپنې رډي نه ورچولي دي هغه ځای ته چې زه ورغلل مور چاپل مې هغه ځای ولیدل بیا چې مور چاپل مې ولیده ما فورا دا تسلیم کړه چې مور مې مثال په شغا ده بیا ما خو ویل چې په خاوره کې دا خو نه پرېوتې ده که نه نور خلک راغلل بیا په ټیکې مې غوښتل تقریبا 25 فوټو ساغ زور چې پازې چې ملاو شو چې کله مې مور ولیده هغې پرته وه مې ورمنډه کړل په نوره محلې خلکو زه ور راونیوله چې د دې ډنجه خرابه وه ډېره زخمونه پکې زیات هغه په باکسا شهید شوه د ټوکړې وه مور خو مې داس وکنه چې خو مور خو چې وایي چې د وګونه خزانات وکنه خو چې غاټه مسالې جوړې شي کنه سپریشنی جوړه شي مېر سره مشوره په وکه میرا ویل چې دوه مشوره وي تو ته تسلی درکو اپریشنی د پیرا ور سره کم شي اوس مې چې مېر شهید کړه مېر مې مړه کړه کنه
Atik and Rafiq, whose mother had been killed in this attack, you know, obviously as anyone would be, they were angry and they were very upset.
پاشي خندوي مسکرات وکنه و چې کله دا په میش په خندان دا هاور فور ډونا ټیک وشو مې پر شهید شو بچون شاید میش تاس مسکره کنه میش څخه پاشي د میش کې مو د کیم ترتیب ویلې چې څه چر درنه وروړو څه چر خپل بچون کې ارته نرترسي
You have people living in constant fear that they are not safe in their own homes or in their streets or in their locality. They live in fear that they would be attacked and they could die, or their children or their property or their land could be seriously affected.
24 घंटे زه ډېر ډارېږم په خپل کې شي آرام نارسي
چې ته ګناه یې وویشتله مونږ هوار وخت یارېږو واړه ماشومان
یو په دا چې جو زرسي او حملې شي د دمکا وشي دغه وشي کنه هغه انجرډ پرسن وي نه کنه ډیډ پرسن هغه باډیز ټول ډسټروي وي
ډېر سره بیماران پیشنټ ډېر جوړ شوي دي چې کوم سایکاټریک پیشنټ دي کنه اکثر د لړدري مې سایکاټریک ډاکټرونو ته وشي
خدا ذهني انزایټي اند ډیپریشنز هغه دي او مین وجه دغه چې از د سیف زون نه کوي هر شای ډسټرب دي
په چې ګوښاو په ګټه خپل ډارېږم مې ته چې مانه مونه ما وځه په کوش کټا شه ډېر تا په ډارېږم
دا څه د چې تو مثال تسلی اعتماد وي چې مثال ته خپل غلط کار نه کوي کنه غلط خلک بلیار نه سي همیش دا 100% دا یقین و چې ان شاء الله
دهشتګر همیش لقب دا غاښ نه میش لیدلې دهشتګر او خالي رډیو نه یې رډیو نه من دهشتګر د مړک دا دهشتګر د
دهشتګر په شکل حالات دي مثال طالبان په حالات دي دا سې دي او دا سې دي او دا وړ بچو نه دي مسیح دي او زنا د
Hundreds of civilians have died in US drone strikes. The evidence is pretty clear on that. Unfortunately, the US media doesn't seem to want to engage on that.
د ملک سره مخابات ته امن خوشاوي دې په وجود میژو غونډې وینا وبای دا میژ مړ شو میژ مېر مړ شو
The news reports, all you have to go on is a reference to 2 militants were killed or 3 militants were killed. And there's not a lot of evidence as to who those militants were.
U.S. media outlets have been mindlessly reciting and regurgitating whatever statistic the government disseminates.
ودا هو چې سیکس ټارګټ ورته جوړ کو هغه مثال غلط بیان ورکو چې داسې دهشتګر در باندې وشتل داس مې مثال القاعده در باندې وشتل کنه لکه سیکس ټارګټ ورکو هغه مثال را بتا ورته وکړو کنه او میر لکه مثال دا هغه کا کنه غلطی دو
जब मैं मीरानशाह पहुंचा तो मुझे वहाँ पर मकामी सहाफ़ियों ने इतला दी कि आपके पीछे चप्पल भी थे तो ये सारी चीज़ें इकट्ठी करके उनकी तस्वीरें निकाली और एक सबूत इकट्ठा करके मीडिया के सामने लाया। मैं रिपोर्टिंग करूँगा इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मीडिया के साथ, लेकिन ग्राउंड पर जाकर जो सूरत हाल होगा उसको दुनिया के सामने लाऊंगा, क्योंकि ख़बर आती थी कि इनमें दहशतगर्द मार दिए हमने, लेकिन बाद में पता चलता था कि इसमें बच्चे भी है, ख़वातीन भी है, बूढ़ी भी है। देखो, हम आम लोग के साथ जब बात करते हैं तो वो कहते हैं कि ये तरीकी रात का तपड़ है।
सेमरा दे इधर ड्रोन वली दमरा दुश्मन टोल वजीरिस्तान ये दुश्मन दा मिता बेगुनाह नाक न वली वजीरिस्तान अखपल पहला न वो दुश्मन से अखपल दुश्मन रो तो का ड्रोन याक ना को
बल सौदा पजरा बेगुनाह खालक मरीजी په زراعي بچون قتل کېږي په زراعي بچونې مینه بایېږي و دې خو دغه نه هغه مثال ده لکه د میژ وله
هغه کسونه چې سل کله بدغه موږ خپل قتل چاته پر دینه نه معاف کوي.
From their point of view, this is not war. This is murder. And that's the way they look at it. It is recruiting terrorists all over the world. It's making young men and young women make the decision that the United States is their enemy and therefore worthy of their jihad.
ګریوان نصیحه دا زیوه نصیو د خپل وینې انتقام میرزنه او خلیزګه چې د میرز د پښتې کلچر دا هداي.
The U.S. has killed a large number of people, and yet at the same time, instead of al-Qaeda growing less in Yemen, we're seeing, in fact, the exact opposite, that the more people we kill, it seems the larger, in fact, that al-Qaeda is growing.
The suspect is arrested in the Times Square bombing attempt.
Faiz al-Shahzad, who was a Pakistani national who was engaged in the attempt to blow up Times Square, the motivation that he put forward for his attack was that he'd witnessed a series of drone strikes, and so he was mounting an attack on a US city in retaliation. The Faiz al-Shahzad attack on Times Square is one example, but there are other possibilities.
This video made by the FBI shows agents detonating a bomb that the government says was identical to the components that Shahzad had assembled.
Bomb investigators found propane tanks, powder, and an apparent timing device.
This Istishhadi attack will be the first of the revenge operations against the Americans and their drone teams.
Another terror attack killing at least 78 people.
The deadliest attack ever on a Christian minority in Pakistan. The Taliban says the attack was in retaliation for U.S. drone strikes.
उन्होंने बोला कि अब हमें कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है खुदकश हमला और तैयार करने के लिए. मैंने खुद देखा है कि जिस गांव में ड्रोन होता है वहां पर
Who is exactly cashing in on putting drones in our skies?
Defense and aerospace firms which build drones have spent millions of dollars on lobbying over the past year.
It's estimated that in the next decade, drones will become an $80 billion business.
50 countries that are actively using drones. If we do it, why can't they?
Now, anybody who can develop drones and arm them, and mind you, there are quite a few out there who can, is going to be able to do it and point at us as the precedent and the protocol.
Other countries will recognize the utility of drones as a means to attack their supposed enemies.
Israel showed off its latest drone.
Japan is looking to buy some more Global Hawk drones.
Rustam is expected to be everything that the American Predator drone is, a bird of prey.
He gets armed spies in the sky.
The British government has spent some £2 billion on developing attack drones.
And China is launching some new lineup to its own fleet of drones.
What if China starts using drones against what it regards as terrorists?
就这种武器挂架下的这种各种的
The decisions we've made in the last few years will come back to haunt us.
Wait till you see a drone over Times Square and you look up and see there comes a Hellfire missile.
The drones are an excuse to avoid thinking seriously about what the United States should be doing to address al-Qaeda, or more broadly, the threat posed by violent Islamic radicalism.
Well, I've actually grown into spending much more time on community-based solutions to these problems because they're just more effective. We've seen a lot of programs that have succeeded in reducing violence and reducing militancy when the community gets involved.
And so what we need to do is to demilitarize U.S. policy. Now, in Washington, that is sort of an unthinkable prospect, because we've got a national security elite that is so much devoted to the assumption that military power provides our strong suit. But the evidence says otherwise.
We had a phrase we used in the State Department. We called it drying up the swamp. You know, taking away the environment in which the terrorist flourishes. We're talking about helping people rather than killing people. I'm talking about a roof over their head. I'm talking about a lasting ceasefire. I'm talking about clean water to drink.
The notion that somehow Al-Qaeda is the equivalent of Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan is foolish.
It's time to recognize that that's not working and to look towards something else, like policing and incorporating people into the political process, better programs at development that will lift people out of poverty and give them alternatives.
If we win the people of tribal areas to our side, we win the war, because they're strong enough to take care of the militants. The armed people in tribal area are almost 800,000 to 900,000. But these drones and Pakistani military operations are pushing these people over to the militant side.
It is clear that the present strategy to contain this violence, to contain these militants, these terrible men of violence, has not succeeded.
We need to stop letting our public servants be our public masters.
چې ډرونه ټیک کله وشو په داسې د مو دوه ترینه او دوه ترې زمون شهیدون شول بشه
خوږېږه ډېر سخت درد کوي کله کله به شیر باندې راشي دغه درد زه زغملی نه شم.
A lot of us came in as young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, young people to becoming gloomy, negative individuals.
دلته کې چې دوه حمله وشوله او درې کسونه شهیدان شول پسې له امیر خپل کور وله او دوه کسونه پسې زخمي شولي.
I felt like I deserved, if I contributed to that many deaths, wouldn't it balance the world out if I was to be a casualty myself?
هسپتال ته یوړل په هسپتال کې مې علاج دپاره ډېرې میاشتې تېرې کړلې او هغه نه چې رخ کړل بیا یې پښې ته یوړل پښې نه ناپر نه واخیستو او ناپر نه بعد بیا پښې ته جوړې کړلې.
I had this ideal about myself where, like, I wanted to do good, I wanted to save people's lives, I wanted to you know, be a hero.
مو اول دا خیال و چې زه سکول وایم سکول ته تلله چې زه بیا ډاکټر جوړ شم یا بل څه به رانه جوړ شي او اوس څه نه شي کولی پښې نه کټ کړلې او بیا سترګه مې ختم شوله بس څه نه شي کولی په کور کې به ناست وم.
I had this oath that I swore that I felt I needed to follow, because I gave my word, and the only thing that's worth anything in this world is your word.
فکر کوي چې دا ډرون حملو بند شي او بس موږ ته ژوندون هرڅون شي دا ډرون حملو بند شي دا فکر کوي موږ.
I had to get away as quickly as possible.
زه امریکای خلکو ته وایم اوباما ته وایم دا پیغام ورکول غواړم.
موږ دا پیغام ورکوي چې موږ د پاکستان عوام ته دا ډرون بند کو ورنه ویلې چې موږ ته ډېر نقصان دی تکلیف دی موږ سره ظلم شي زیاتای شي کبر شي سره دا دای بند کو زر نه زر دای بند کو.
اوباما ته مو دا پیغام دی چې دا مهرباني ده د موږ سره وکړو چې موږ ته دا د مزه په سترګه نه ګوري د انسانیت په سترګه درته وکړي موږ انسانون یې خوله و پزه و یو شی دی جسم و یو شی دی بدن و یو شی دی.
چې څه پای غریبون دی آغاز دی ډېر په بعد امیر دا وایي چې دا ډرون چې دا باندې کو